Good morning, Peter Zalm's Griniflix Adventure 8, and welcome to another video. Today I'm filming in Sydney from my adventure vehicle here, and I'm going to be testing out an old vintage Nikon lens. I have a friend, a private collector. He lent me an unusual lens. It's always interesting, especially the big wide open ones like this one. This is the Nikon 200mm f2. AIS lens, so it's a manual focus lens, f2 200mm. I'm going to be trying this lens out here today, but it's a sunny environment, so I'm going to have a harbour environment. I'll be able to shoot in the shadows as well as in the bright light there. I see what these old vintage lenses can do, especially compared to some of the more modern ones. So my reference lens is going to be the Nikon 70 to 200 f2.8 FLED. This is an F-mount lens, and I know from testing this previously it's pretty damn good. Almost as good as the Z variant of this lens, but you know, the differences are so minute you'd in real life photography you'd never notice it. But anyway, that's going to be my reference lens. The body that I'll be using is the Nikon D850, and this has got a 47 megapixel sensor, so it's a huge sensor. And also another lens that I'll be using as reference is this one here. It's a zoom lens, 28 to 300mm, f3.5 to f5.6 lens. Well, one thing for sure, you do notice a big difference in the size of these three lenses. The length of the 200 AIS lens is probably much the same as the 70 to 200. 28 to 300 is much shorter. As far as weight's concerned, we're looking at 2.5 kilograms for the 200, 1.5 kilograms for the 70 to 200, and for the 28 to 300, just under 900 grams, so just less than 1 kilogram, so 50% heavier, and then this is 250% heavier than the small lens there. Vibration control inside here, a VR lens, and also this one's a VR lens as well, and no vibration control on this one at all. So if you're shooting on an F-mount camera, well then you don't have any vibration control. Just something to keep into consideration as far as choosing a shutter speed or mounting on a tripod. You might have gathered this is my adventure vehicle that I use to travel right across Australia. I mentioned in one of my past videos that I'll be doing another trip going right across Australia from Sydney to Broome, and the circuit will vary depending on who wants to join me. Whether it's the Simpson Desert, the outback Queensland, Northern Territory, Western Australia, Kimberleys, all sorts of areas like that. I'm going to be taking the vehicle across all that area and then doing a loop back to Sydney. If people want to join me for part of the tour, either as a passenger or as a tag along if you've got your own vehicle and you want to join me for a day or 2 days, a week or whatever, let me know. Contact me on adventure8.com.au, and we can see whether your schedule fits in with my schedule and you can join me on that tour. There will be some fees associated with that, some guiding fees around photography and obviously adventure travel, and that helps me make it a bit more sustainable. Anyway, thought I'll put in a plug for this video. Alright, so I'll continue. I'll take some photographs around here. We've got lots of contrast with the lighting that we got right now, and that's going to test these lenses shooting wide open, whether it be f2 2.8 or with this other one, this 35 to this 28 to 300mm lens. That's got 3.5 to 5.6, so when you're zooming right in at shooting at 5.6, that's going to give me a completely different depth of field. But what I've noticed shooting wide open, particularly with the old AIS lenses, is that you have a lot of fringing. The chromatic aberration, whether it be purple fringing or green fringing, depending on where your focus point is and what's in focus and what's out of focus. So that's my expectation. We'll see whether that's true. I'll grab some shadow shots as well as some sunny shots and see what we get. Here are some edited photos. I've edited the photos as RAW files and then exported them so they're all the same size into these JPEG files, and that way it's easier to compare. This was the original photo of using the 200mm f2 AIS lens. Straight away, the things that you notice, and this is shooting at f2, this is what I was expecting from the older lenses. That with the older AIS Nikon lenses, wide open, often you have a lot of this chromatic aberration here. You see the purple fringing here, some green fringing around there as well, around the leaves, and that is typical of these sort of older lenses. How you adjust that in post-processing, there are some options you can do, and we do lens correction and manual. If we sort of go in there, we can see we can sort of change that a little bit by changing the defringing here. It's not perfect, I mean it still leaves some sort of a shadow line, but you can do stuff like that. And on the green side, let's see what happens when you start adjusting the green. Doesn't work too much, but anyway, that is the thing about shooting wide open with this sort of lens. So what I've done is I've taken a crop section here, and that's the same for all of these. So this first crop is the Nikon 28 to 300mm f3.5 to 5.6, and again from experience with this lens, when shooting with a strong background, it does haze the image a bit, and you notice that in this photograph. That's the original from the AIS 200, and then this is the cropped in on the AIS 200, which we saw earlier, and then this is the 70 to 200 2.8, the last of the 70 to 200 2.8 of the f-mount Nikon lenses. And as I said earlier, that this is an outstanding lens, and you can see this. There's some bokeh balls there, but because of the angle that I took this at, we don't notice it too much there. But just the clarity of the shot. No fringing. This is wide open at 2.8. It is an outstanding lens. So that's our reference point, is the 72 to 200. Anyway, there you go. So that was the first observation. No surprises there. The 72 to 200 2.8 is without a doubt the best lens as far as the image quality is concerned. But anyway, all right, we'll have a look at the next set. So this is the AIS 200, and when we don't have strong backlight, we get quite a nice image here. You still do notice that the detail is not quite there wide open on the 200. So now we're cropped. This is the AIS cropped. This is a 28 to 300 cropped for the same scene. So you do notice the difference in background. The bokeh on the 200 AIS is very blended, I suppose, very creamy, and then it becomes more harsh because we're shooting at 5.6 on the 300, and on the 70 to 200 at 2.8, it's it's something in between that and that. But look at the clarity that you get with the 70 to 200. Wide open is incredible. So we start off with the full image. So this is the full image, full frame, and then I've cropped into this section here. So this is the 200 f2 AIS, and already you can see the green fringing around the leaves here. And let's have a look at the close-ups. So all right, so this is the 28 to 300. And yeah, it does a pretty good job. Reasonable detail. And now we've got the AIS cropped into the same frame, and you see that green fringing, and then everything becomes, the bokeh is quite strong. You see this green fringing around here, around the rocks again. Again, shooting wide open at 2.0. Once you start to stop down at 2.8 and 4 and 5.6 on the AIS lens, you start to get rid of that fringing. And then this is at 70 to 200, and you can see how clear that shot is. And we zoom in here, and we're down 70 to 200 is outstanding. So we've got a the reference lens is an excellent lens, and everything else shows up faults. A reference shot is there. All right, 200 f2 AIS, and then we crop in. So this is a 28 to 300. The cropped 200 f2. Straight away you see nice beautiful bokeh there. We don't have extreme lighting conditions here, not as much as the other shots, and therefore we start to have a more pleasant photograph that's not testing the lens to the extreme. And 70 to 200 2.8, what we do know straight away is that we have a much more detail here in the part that's in focus. You can see every scratch on the aluminium railing here. If we zoom in on this one, so that's AIS. You almost see some purple fringing there just around the scratches. Yep. And the purple fringing's gone here on the 28 to 300, that's at 5.6. So it's amazing where that purple fringing comes in wide open. On the 2.8, there's none. You can see it's just all grey. Alright, so here's an example of that purple fringing again. So we've got the Nikkor 200 f2 AIS shooting at f2. So you notice the handrail here and the amount of fringing that is. Now if we go to the next shot, that's at 2.8, and then we go to f4, and then we go to 5.6, and then we go to f8, and you can see how things change around the purple fringing. So, and also you can start to see the starburst here with the aperture ring closing down. That's 5.6, that's f4, f2.8, and f2. And if we go back to the full frame here, you don't notice it too much in the full picture unless you actually really zoom in at 200% here. And you can see the background here when we go from 8 to 5.6 to 4 to 2.8 to 2. Like always, it really does depend on how you take the photograph and whether the aberrations and the peculiarities of the lens can add to the creativity of the shot and the pleasure of that shot. Alright, so in this shot here I'm just showing you the depth of field you get with the 200 f2 AIS lens. That's f2, and you can see how narrow the focus, the depth of field is, and then how it just goes into this creamy bokeh, both in the background as well as in the foreground. And then if we look at the background and the foreground change as we go to f4, f2.8, f4 and onwards. So now we go 2.8, f4, f5.6, and f8. Now depth of field has increased to almost 1, 2, 3, so 3 times depth of field, and then starts to back off into the bokeh gradually. I think that's about it on that. Well, we need to come to some sort of conclusion on all this. So the question is, do you go for something like this, f2 200? Do you go for something like this, a 70 to 200 2.8? So f2 2.8. Look at the difference in size. That's incredible. So again, to my point, I like to shoot my lenses wide open to get the full characteristic of that lens. a lot of effort has gone into research and development to create these sort of lenses. In that moment of time, that was the technology that was available for this. And this is the technology that's available now with the 70-200. The last of the F-mount Nikon zoom lenses. So, I mean, the reality is that the compromise you make here, you don't have as much bokeh as you do with the 200. It's really nice creamy bokeh. But you know, there's always a compromise between lenses. This is 2.5 kilograms, this is 1.5. This is a zoom lens, takes you from 70 to 200. This is fixed at 200. So what this little test has done is given me a greater appreciation for this, the 70 to 200. 2.8 FLED lens with the vibration reduction. Nanotechnology or anything else that goes into this lens is just outstanding. Nevertheless, and also my wonderful travel lens, the 28 to 300, which has a purpose as well. In backlight situations, it does create haze in the image, but in most other situations, you can get outstanding imagery with this. 5.6 at the maximum zoom level means you lose a lot of the bokeh, so you don't quite have the effect of this lens. But we'll look at this, it's half the size and 2/3 of the weight, just under a kilogram, 900 grams. However, so the point of this exercise was to use this lens and to see what its pros and cons were. We've talked about the cons, and the pros are nice, beautiful bokeh, without a doubt. From a practical perspective, it's quite still amazing lens. It's everything, the focus elements are all inside, so there's nothing moving on the outside. It's really smooth. It's amazing how smooth this is. You have a massive rotation movement in the focus ring here, so that you can really refine your focus and get the focus right. The focus assist in the camera with the DSLR, you have a little dot and a little arrow that shows you whether you need to rotate counterclockwise or clockwise to get into focus. That seemed to work really well. As far as the lens is concerned, it wasn't that hard to use in manual focus, but it is heavy. And once you stop it down, well, then you get rid of a lot of the chromatic aberration. Alright, I think that's about it. Now this lens I did borrow from my friend who is a collector and a dealer in photographic gear. If you are interested in purchasing this lens, it is for sale. You could always contact me on adventure8.com.au, and then I can pass on details and you can get a conversation going. My friend prices his lenses according to the quality of the lens, and this will be priced accordingly as well. So if you're interested, just make contact. If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up. I hope you've enjoyed it. If it's the first time to my channel, and do subscribe. That's how you help the channel, and you know, your likes and your comments are important, because then that also gives me an indication of what you like to see on my channel and the type of ideas that I come up and the content that I create for you guys as well. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers, bye.